Hey everybody, welcome to Contemporary Lit 331. This is Contemporary Literature, one of my favorite classes to teach. My name is Jacqueline Allen Trimble. I will be your professor this term, this 5 weeks. So we're going to be talking about contemporary literature. The great thing about contemporary literature is there is no yardstick by which to judge it. We don't know what's going to survive 400 years. We don't know what play we're watching or reading today is going to be the Shakespeare of the future. But what we can say about contemporary literature is we can say how it reflects this cultural moment that has produced it. For example, all literature is produced in a historical and cultural moment. And it is a reflection of people's anxieties, their desires, their hopes, their dreams, all of that moment. What is the moment? What is the cultural and historical moment? What is the society like that produces it? What are the writers who produced it preoccupied with in that moment? So all literature at some time or another was contemporary literature. At the time Shakespeare is writing his literature during the Elizabethan period, it is contemporary literature. And so much of what he writes reflects the cultural anxiety, the cultural preoccupations, the cultural politics of the time, as all literature does. So if we think about a Shakespearean play like Coriolanus, about this great warrior who becomes a leader and who has this very controlling mother, we can read that play because people are still warriors, and warriors still become leaders, and leaders often still have controlling mothers. But it would help us to know about the Corn Laws that were created during that period of time, and how this play is also not just a sort of universal or cultural examination of what happens to a warrior or what happens to a leader when he ignores the people or when the people are starving, but we can also deepen our understanding of it by looking at the Corn Laws, by looking at what was happening during this contemporary period that produced this play. So the same thing is taking place with all of the things that you're going to be reading during this term. So for example, we're going to look at some poems tonight, and those poems are going to be produced in the contemporary period. And so we think about the contemporary period as literature that's being produced right now. And so if we had to demarcate a kind of historical line, it would be 1962. But that line is moving. That line is moving. So a lot of the things that we are reading this semester are very contemporary. Novels like Gone Girl, even though a novel like The Talented Mr. Ripley was produced decades before Gone Girl, it's still very contemporary, particularly in the way it ushers in this this interest, I guess is the best way to say it, this interest in anti-hero narrators or anti-heroes who form the center of a novel. Because Mr. Ripley is not good. He is a horrible person, and yet we want him to get away with murder. We want him to win. And we have to say, why is that? How is that a reflection of our contemporary time that we want this kind of reprehensible person to win? And what is it that Highsmith taps into an understanding of contemporary culture? And so when we talk about that novel, we'll talk about things like the Cold War that's going on, where we're not having boots on the ground war, but we're having a war of spies and espionage and state secrets and this kind of general anxiety of secrets and lies. And so The Talented Mr. Ripley kind of taps into all of that and the paranoia of that. A lot of what we'll be talking about has to do with postmodernism. And in postmodernism, there are a number of features that the work that we're going to be looking at taps into. For example, the idea of the meta text. So we have these texts that have all sorts of references to other text, other types of text, whether that be music or film or plays or other types of things. So that's one thing. We'll also have this kind of dark narrator or unreliable narrator. Most of these people who narrate what we'll be reading are not, let's just say, they're often snide, cynical, mean-spirited, not the most attractive people when it comes to looking at how people are morally centered. So we'll talk a little more about that in the weeks to come. For tonight, you had a video to watch, and that video was on the diseases of modernity. And what the video is talking about, that video from the School of Life, is talking about relative to the diseases of modernity. It's talking about what is creating anxiety in people. Because most of the things that we read in the contemporary age come out of this real feeling of anxiety. And so let's think about the way many notions, for example, notions of love, notions of even the biblical story of Lazarus have been rewritten by these contemporary authors from a different point of view. And a lot of these poems that we read for this week are anxiety ridden. I mean, we have the story of Mrs. Lazarus, which is the story of a widow, but then her husband comes back to life, and instead of kind of the traditional line, this joyous story, we have someone who is absolutely mortified. And if you think about it, if you buried your husband and you'd been a widow so long that you had begun to recover, to get over it, to start to date again, and then suddenly your husband rose from the dead, stinking of the grave, with the accoutrement in which he was buried, you may not run to embrace him and think it was a good thing. You would be pretty freaked out. And so the traditional story is that you would be so happy that he was back and it would be wonderful. But if we sort of think about that for a minute, would you be happy? Wouldn't you be freaked out? And so that's what contemporary literature seeks to do. There's a very realistic quality to it. And it also challenges sort of the traditional narratives that we have been told. So, the other thing we're going to be talking about tonight as it relates to the videos, each of the poems, and I'll go through each of the poems. And I've broken this up into short videos, and I'll get to that in just a second. I'll point out a few things about how the course is structured, since it's going to be entirely online this time. And we won't actually go through the quiz answers tonight. We'll sort of do the quizzes backwards. So next week we'll go through quiz 1, and that's to give all the people who have not had an opportunity to take quiz 1 an opportunity to take quiz 1. Okay, so let me give you some useful information. So you've got your modules, and in each of your modules, what I'm going to post are little lecture videos that cover the material, just like we would cover them in class, probably in a more condensed version, because nobody, wants to sit and listen to me yabber on for 4 hours, okay? And so I will title the little video with what the lecture is exactly on, so you'll be able to take a look at it. Number 2, the syllabus is created, or the course shell is created for an in-class meeting, and we won't be meeting in class. So attendance is going to be taken by your response to the discussion question each week. So I've given you till tomorrow to just answer one of those discussion questions for this week, and I'll, or if you've done your quiz already, I'll use that as attendance. So either your quiz, I'll use your quiz as your attendance for the week, or your discussion question as your attendance for the week. you have a presentation to do in this class, and that presentation is on one of the topics listed under the presentation. And so, of course, we're not going to be meeting for you to get up and do the presentation. So you can either videotape it and upload it, or you can do a PowerPoint presentation and upload it. And so when you look at that assignment, it's got some details about how I want you to submit that. You will be submitting it in a way that all of us will be able to see it, and I'm going to ask for some peer responses to that. Your draft for Essay 2 is due next week, and so normally we would do a draft workshop, but instead of doing a draft workshop, I'm going to ask you to submit again your essay, your draft essay, to the discussion board, and your classmates and I are going to respond to them using the peer response worksheet. So you have a peer response worksheet, and you have a link that you can upload or post your paper to, so that we can discuss it and give you some feedback as you write this paper. This paper is not due until June the 22nd, so it's important that you go ahead and put the draft in. When you look at the assignment, I have posted lots of things under that assignment to walk you through doing this essay. I've got a template there that you can follow. I've got writing about poetry. I've got a poetry analysis. I've got the actual assignment, and I've also got a checklist that you can go through once you do your draft. So everything, all the instruction, all the information will be posted online, either in document form or video form, every single week. I will generally post on Tuesdays because that's our meeting day. So the postings for week 1 have been posted. And so this is just a little introductory video, and I'm going to actually post a video for each of those, not each of those, but I'll post a video giving lectures on those poems, so that you can think about the analysis. I can walk you through the analysis, and I'll also post a little short video on writing about poetry. The other thing I have posted for you this week is a list of poetry terms. These are terms that you can use in your paper that you can apply to the poem that you choose to write about. And if you have any questions, you can email me at jtrimble@hawks.huntingdon.edu. It was nice to meet you all. Oh, last thing, sorry. I've also posted a little discussion link so that you can introduce yourself to me and introduce yourself to the class. You know, a sentence or two, whatever you want to tell us about yourself. Okay, the videos won't quite be this long, but there'll be a series of them. Take care. Hope you're safe. Hope your family's doing well. Bye.